All right, so we were looking at this a little earlier, and it relates to our poll of the day. A ministerial task team has recommended that history should be introduced as a compulsory subject from grades 10 to matric. Learners in lower grades already obliged to take history. The task team, led by Professor Sibusiso Ndlovu, was established in 2015. It was asked to conduct a comparative global study on how best to implement the introduction of history as a compulsory subject in grades 10, 11 and 12. The team says history should be enhanced as it offers problem-solving and analytical skills. The report has recommended that history be phased in from 2023, with the process leading to the phasing out of life orientation. To discuss, we're now joined by the spokesperson for the Department of Basic Education, Mhlanga. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Mhlanga. So, how is this going to happen? Because the minister seems to support it.
Well, the feedback that we've seen from people since the report was unveiled earlier today does indicate that it will happen. But even before today, when the minister said she had received the report in April, people were supporting the fact that history should become a compulsory subject in grade 10, 11 and 12.
It sounds like nobody's too attached to life orientation, to be honest.
Well, people recognize its importance, but they want it strengthened. And they want it kept in the curriculum, but they want it adjusted somehow so that it can do more for us.
There's this huge concern. Business has been saying the right skills aren't being developed to make workers more productive. Maybe maths for engineers, accountancy. Is this the right focus? I love history. I studied history even at varsity. But is this the right focus for where we are as a country?
It is. Maths already, it's a big subject in our curriculum. It's a focus subject. We have over R1 billion in a conditional grant that goes towards the development of mathematics, and in fact it remains compulsory right through the schooling system. So that is done. What we are doing now is to consolidate what we have already put in place and to make sure that implementation takes place. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure that all spheres of the education system are strengthened, and to us history is an important one. Remember, it was not even our own initiative. It was stakeholders, members of the public in South Africa, who came to the minister and made representations. So she took this matter and went to Parliament in 2014, expressed the intention of conducting this investigation, and here we are now.
Everybody, however, has a different view on what should be important in history. It's something that's subjective. You can highlight or de-emphasize things. It's been accused of being colonial. How do you deal with all of that and the concern that it could in fact be a propaganda tool?
It shouldn't be a propaganda tool. It should try to foster social cohesion, make sure that it deals with a whole lot of things like xenophobia, tribalism, ethnicity that seems to be troubling us as a country, with all the things that are taking place where people are swearing at each other using words, and all of this misunderstanding that is taking place. So the purpose of making history a compulsory subject is really to bring us together as a country and build the nation, understanding our diversity and its importance. So it shouldn't be a propaganda tool at all.
And I don't think there are real concerns about history until grade 10. I haven't heard alarmist groups looking at the way we're dealing with history already.
Well, there were concerns. That's why people approached the department and said we need to focus on it. And what makes us happy is that the majority of those people who made the representations are teachers. The people who deal with it in class every day and said, what we are teaching our children is not what we should be teaching as South Africans. We need to look at making it Afrocentric, talking more about our heroes, recognizing some of the events that took place in this country that we are not giving prominence to, and instead promoting histories of other countries and those that don't have direct relevance to us as a country here.
So you focus on South Africa. I saw one of the recommendations was one paper, I think, on Africa, South Africa and then one paper on global history.
That's a proposal. That's on the assessment part, to say if you were to make it compulsory, what then happens with the examinations of a subject that is compulsory. So the proposal is that there should be two papers. Paper one to focus on African history, and the second paper on European history or world history, basically. So that's the proposal, and if South Africans agree, that will be the case.
Let's bring in, from our Pretoria studios, we have Dr. Mogamat Noor Davids from the Educational Foundations Department at UNISA. Doctor, good evening to you. Can you answer the same question, given the concerns about skills development in South Africa?
I can't hear it clearly, eh?
Doctor, let's try again. Is it right for us to focus on history, where we are as a country right now? All right, the doctor's having trouble hearing us, so we apologize for that. So let me come back to you, basic education. The task team did studies, I see, in Russia, China, Zimbabwe, and Rwanda. That doesn't hearten me, because talking about propaganda, I've been to China, and I know journalists that I interacted with were lied to about economic data at that point. How wide was this international study? How valid was that?
Well, it was valid. They spent time. That's why they started work in 2015 and only completed a report in
and there are 13 countries, to be fair.
Yeah. It's a lot of countries. Ghana is there as well. But you see, when you go to learn, you also learn what not to do, not what to do. You learn and take best practices. That which you don't need, you don't take. And the report, the compilers do say that yes, we picked up that in Zimbabwe they have patriotic history. We shouldn't follow that route. You go to Nigeria, where it's not compulsory. Something there went wrong as well. So we are not going to do what those two countries did, but perhaps we should do what they did in Brazil. So those are the lessons that we are picking up from the research that the task team conducted, and we are taking that which we believe is good for this country.
So you don't want patriotic history that's all glowing and sweeps things under the carpet. You don't want a focus on global history. So what will the department use as its guidelines to get this right going forward?
We'll use the experts. The same approach that we approached when we used when we compiled this report. The task team went around the country, conducted roundtable discussions, engaged all sorts of people who are interested on the matter, historians from other universities as well, and we got a lot of material that came through about stuff that should be in the history curriculum right now that's not there, and we feel it should be there. And this work took a lot of time, people disagreeing, debating, but at the end of the day we had a document which is an outcome of robust debate which took place, and we appreciate that. So the textbooks, the material that will be there and selected for teaching in our schools will also go through such a process. So
phasing in will begin in 2023 at the moment. The blueprint is there.
Yes, if all goes according to plan.
Why do you even need 6 years? Why can't it be
Well,
immediate?
you need to phase it in. You know, I always say this, that in the education system, you need to phase things in. If you don't, you shock the system and things go wrong. And we've learned over many years in the implementation of different policies. So we've now learned that you need to phase things in, because we've got 12 million learners, you've got 410,000 teachers in 25,000 schools. So you can't do something overnight. You need to make sure that you workshop it thoroughly, nicely, so that everyone understands what it is that they will be doing in the following years for it to be successful.
All right, thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we will speak to Dr. Noor Davids from UNISA. Apparently he can hear me. Let's try again. Doctor, what I was asking the Department of Basic Education is, given the cry from business for better math skills, things like that, should we be focusing on history right now?
Well, firstly, there's a lot of things wrong with our educational system, and our history curriculum is also not the best curriculum that you can get. And there's definitely a need for curriculum reform in history. Whether it is a priority in terms of the MTT task force, it is important that the country be groomed towards a sense of nationhood and social cohesion, which is lacking. And the question is whether making history compulsory can actually deliver those outcomes. So I'm worried whether changing the history curriculum will actually have the desired outcomes that are intended with this particular reform that's now going to take place.
So you're skeptical?
In a way, yes, but I must also emphasize that there is a need for history to be taught. Whether it should be taught from grade 10 to 12 is another question. Looking at the curriculum as it is, history is being taught, say, from grade 1 to grade 9, and the problem with the quality of history teaching is not so much the problem with the curriculum as it is a problem with the quality of history teaching in terms of knowledge that teachers have and how they are teaching history. So, given the implications that go with a curriculum change, it's going to be destabilizing to the system, and especially schools that's already struggling to find their feet, trying to implement the existing CAPS curriculum, they're going to have another challenge, and that is to be able to manage and implement another curriculum. However, I do want to say that there is a need for history to be taught differently and to be taught to all our schools, because history is being neglected, and having a nation that is struggling from amnesia is not good. So I am in favor of having to address the question of making history compulsory, but the way we are going to go about it is going to be destabilizing and very costly. And if one considers the conditions in the country and the priorities in terms of what is required, then perhaps we should look at improving teacher education, teacher content knowledge, and the pedagogy, that is the method of how history is being taught, and of course what is being taught to be improved, instead of proposing an overall alteration and reform that is going to be very, very costly on the one hand, and also destabilizing on especially the section of the educational system that is already struggling to produce quality outcomes and quality results.
Dr. I'll see if I can get a quick comment on that. But firstly, I haven't looked at a history school textbook for years. What's wrong with the current content? If you can outline maybe a few historical figures that are being left out or overemphasized, what needs to be fixed, if you can answer that simply?
Well, I've actually done a bit of research into the content of the curriculum between grade 1 and grade 9, and all the important issues that need to be addressed, like, for instance, the history of our struggle against colonialism, the racism, and issues that's important for a nation to develop a sense of nationhood and social cohesion are there. It is the poor quality of teaching that is undermining the content at this moment. So I think the focus should rather be on teacher education. There is a need also for extra historical content to be added to the existing curriculum, but I don't think the curriculum in terms of its content is so bad that it requires a complete overhaul. There are other priorities that are also important. Yeah.
All right, thanks. That's an interesting view. So let me let you have the last word, because he's saying the problem is not actually content, it's that the teachers aren't teaching history well.
I don't think he has read the report. If you read the report, you would see that all the things that he's proposing are actually in the report. The compilers have captured that, and in fact the chairperson of the task team is a colleague of his at UNISA, and he knows that it is the universities that are training our teachers. So if there's poor teaching, it's the universities. Maybe that's where he must start.
All right, thank you very much. Elijah Mhlanga from the Department of Basic Education, and Dr. Mogamat Noor Davids from UNISA. Unfortunately, we have to leave this hot debate there.